So let's talk a little bit about this concept, this analogy we use throughout the book, and I use every time I talk with a new client about their situation. It's kind of a way to get a snapshot of where you are with respect to the amount of risk in your financial life and the control that you have. And we adapted this from Maslow, or I should say you adapted this from Maslow, in his hierarchy of needs. And there was a specific thing about how you build a pyramid of Giza, to make it, it's a very stable structure. A pyramid, a right pyramid that's, designed not too tall, not too thin or narrow, is really, really stable, assuming you spend the time to put all the bricks in, right? And what I found in my world, and this is the part where I said that earlier, that it was very simple. It is now very simple for me to explain why I personally came to this way of life and way of thinking about personal finance, because I had everything at the top of this pyramid up where it was at risk of falling, and nothing down at the bottom, or very little at the bottom, right? So walk us through just a little bit about, kind of provide a visual image, and we'll maybe, or a mental image, and we'll maybe stick a visual in with us here too.
Yeah, so I'll first say that I've had a lot of lessons in business, and those lessons usually come because of failure, right? It comes, whether it's employees, whether it's marketing campaign, tons of lessons. But what I've discovered is to look for successful frameworks. And we've already mentioned one, which is the definition of financial independence. Now, it doesn't mean that that's your definition, but it's a starting place, right? It gives you a milestone to get to. You may not feel financially independent when half of your lifestyle expenses is coming from cash flow from investments and half is coming from meaningful work. That may not be your definition, but it's a milestone, right, that we've seen create lots of financial independence for clients. Frameworks is kind of where I learned, all right, there's hiring frameworks, there's business management frameworks, there's business operation frameworks. So that's where we're starting to apply frameworks to personal finance. So Abraham Maslow, very, very famous psychologist, most famous for his study of human nature. And he came up with this hierarchy of needs, which is basically where do people naturally gravitate to first? Okay, and obviously it's physiological, food, shelter, clothing. If you've ever been in really cold weather, just pay attention to your body, and it wants shelter. It wants warmth. It wants clothes, right? So we're naturally, as human beings, inclined for certain things. So it's physiological, then it's safety, then it's relationships, then it's self-esteem, then it's self-actualization. I'm not going to go into that framework, but what we try to do is find is there a framework in personal finance, a place that you start and then build on? And so we discovered that there is, right? So that's kind of where the hierarchy of wealth came from, right? It's a model that you can use to categorize your assets. And you categorize those assets based on the amount of risk and control. And we start to define that in 4 tiers.
Yeah, so Patrick, and just to finish up with the analogy and why I think Maslow used that is that you have to build a foundation, and if you find yourself higher on the pyramid because you had a good day, let's say that the food, shelter, and clothing was solved because it was warm, but you hadn't really solved it.
Yep.
And community worked out okay, and you find yourself up dreaming on a warm, sunny afternoon, what am I on this planet for? But then it gets super cold, and you realize I haven't solved it. That we're missing bricks, right? And you're right back
your
down.
mindset completely shifts right to that foundation.
Right.
Yep.
So you got to build that before you can actually move from it. Otherwise, you're just kind of playing around, teetering on these bricks up on top. If that image makes sense to you. So we wanted to do the same thing with the financial side only, right? I'm personally not going to get in a conversation with you about what you're put on this planet for. I don't know that I'm really qualified for that. I don't even know what.
Yet.
I have an idea.
You haven't qualified for it yet.
That's right. Just yet. So we're more on the financial side, right? And for years, I can vividly remember, nice young guy, but he was, the age of my son is now. This was, more than 10 years ago. I'm getting to Pearl Harbor, Hawaii for my command tour, and it's probably the 15th time I've moved in the Navy. And every couple of years, it was still financial advising, kind of the Fidelity version, right? We would still go into the office and meet our new agent. And when you moved, you got a new agent because there was this remote thing didn't make any sense, right? And so this new person I'm sitting across the desk from now is like 20 years easily younger than me. And I, that's not the whole story, right? That shouldn't set all the perspective, but he's given me recommendations to make investments. And it's almost as if he's reading a teleprompter. And finally I asked, okay, I understand that you think I should, check out these few mutual funds, but I'm like, what are you investing in, right? And I mean, the poor guy, that was not a fair question, right? Like, he's investing in his student loans at this point, right? But it just, it made me think like, I'm not sure, but the reason I bring that up is because it was, at least a dozen times by that point, we got in this conversation about, hey, what can I do better for you? And I'm like, well, you can make the stocks grow faster. That'd be fun. And, well, how risk averse are you? Interesting you brought that up. But how risk averse are you? Because if you're not risk averse, if you're open to a little bit of risk, then you should get a higher return. And that just didn't work for me, right? And so, but then I see this hierarchy of wealth thing, admittedly 5 years after I've already started this process, or 7 years. But that's why this pyramid made so much sense to me, because on one side he has control, and the maximum control is down at the foundation of it, and then risk, as in like falling off the pyramid risk, right, is higher as you go up the pyramid. So they're opposite. And so high control, low risk. It almost like seems obvious, right? So that, if you're in a place where you have absolutely no control over what's going to happen, blindfolded in the back of a car and no one's driving it and it's moving down the freeway, but that's low control and high risk, right? And so that's the idea and the framework from which you built a hierarchy of wealth. And so to simplify things, we kind of broke it into 4 different tiers, right?
Yeah, and I think, so maybe just to solidify the point of like, okay, starting at the foundation, building on the foundation is like a tree and roots, right? So a tree, the more it grows, the more susceptible it is to fall unless there is a stable ground for the roots to grow. Because during turbulent windstorms, et cetera, if the roots aren't deep enough, what's going to happen to the tree? Tree's going to fall over, right? Now, if you have deep roots and a really tall tree, a branch is going to fall off, right? It'll crack here, it'll crack there, but the tree will stay intact if the roots are stable.
Right, and the way that we interact with our clients, and we'll talk, about each tier, and there's actually going to be a course on each tier. But the way in which we interact with clients is that we periodically get back together throughout. This is a lifetime engagement, right? It's our goal, at least, is to stay with our clients for a lifetime. And so we periodically get back together, and and we are actually going over their personal pyramid. We have some software that's getting better and better, but it will map out for them where they sit today and kind of help with the conversation of what should we move around, what should we do. Hey, interesting that we're meeting. I was wondering, should I invest more in in some volatile stocks, or should I put more money in my checking account or something, right? Like, so we just look at the pyramid, right? And so that if you want to go taller, if you get this idea, hey, I want to be an angel investor for $500,000 into something, go from 10,000 today to 500,000. Well, that's a lot at the top, right? And it's really tall, so I need to widen the base as well. That means that I need to add here, here, and here. And so that's the way in which we go through life with our clients doing that.